It's your Wednesday night conversation. It's more than just the gossip. It's the issues that matter most to you. A closer look at current events, just the tip, special guests, and more. Welcome to Let's Have a Fefe, Arizona's longest-running drag live stream. Hosted by Felicia Fefe Minor and Freddy Prinze Charming. Streaming live on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Promotional consideration for Let's Have a Fefe provided by Wigs of a Kind, The Burly Barber, Bone and Basil, as well as our patrons at Patreon. Go to patreon.com/Let's Have a Fefe to become a Fefe patron. Virtual tips accepted at paypal.me/Let's Have a Fefe. Welcome to Let's Have a Fefe.
Oh my gosh. Down. Anyway, so what I was saying is, I hope you like the new intro. I am in this big old room by myself because Freddy is sick. That's what this was. I want to thank my friend Ben Patrick Johnson for doing the intro that you just saw. What? Oh, I'm good now? Okay. Good. So this is episode God knows whoever, whatever. But if you are, in the sharing mood, please share the episode. I am hopefully not going to kill you guys over all of this, but the best thing about this episode is you'll get to still see Freddy because we recorded our interview this week on the weekend. So, damn. You get him. You get him anyway. But yes. You know what this is. But I'd like to thank our Patreon supporters. I'm still gonna read that off, even though it says Patreon. Allison, Best, and Brandon, Casey Starr, Carrie and Corey, Kim, Joan, Jody, Leanne, Nicole, Patricia Mason, and Sassy C. Diaz. And if you haven't gotten it yet, this is Freddy for right now. Current mood. It's the mood. It's the mood. Mm-hmm. It's the mood. Yes. People texted me that I'm muted. Yes, I see that. Like 3 people texting me that I'm muted. Yes, I'm so sorry. It's, I guess, new intro, old habit. Sorry. Oh, what's going on? What's going on? Um, for me, this weekend, we did the interview. I had a couple of meetings, and I celebrated with my husband. 12 years married. We've been together for 14 years, though. But I wrote on Instagram, or was it yesterday? I think it was yesterday. Someday. Um, that he gave me flowers because he puts up with me. And then Freddie said, do I get flowers too? But see, that's the thing. The flowers go to me for you putting up with me. See how that goes? I know. Doesn't really. It defies logic. I understand. I understand. It's fine. It's fine. Fine. Yes. Thank you, Francis. Yes. I'm still trying to do what I usually do when Freddie is here, and it's not working very well. So if you're in the comments, tell me what you did this weekend, because we usually go back and forth with Freddie and yada yada yada. It's just me. Oh, there we are. Just making sure we're on. Oh, Twitch has a warning on it. Has a warning. Be careful before you go in, boys and girls. Hello on YouTube. Hi, Marissa. What else happened this weekend? Oh, we're still raising money for July as Black and Indigenous people of color Mental Health Month. So I'm raising money for the Black Mental Alliance, or I may be saying it backwards. Black Mental Health Alliance. That's what it is. They have a big old long name, but I guess I could take this face down. They support professionals who are in the mental health field, whether it be a doctor or what have you. It's just so important. Self-care, mental health, taking care of it, especially now that we're all just locked in, and if you're going to work, you're going to work very cautiously. It's just really important. But so far, we have raised $645. We are at a $750 goal. Usually, I raise it, but we started at like $500 this time. So, if we can get to the $750, maybe we go for $1,000. Maybe. I don't know. So far, no one's biting this week, but maybe this is a bad week for it, especially with the Republicans wanting to cut back unemployment and all that this week. That's it for me. No sound. Still no sound? Wait, hold on. No sound. No, I can hear myself. Still no sound? Yep. I'm there. Or I think I am. Not here, but I'm there. Okay. Okay, hi. Test. Wendy, can you hear me? Oh, you hear my family? All right. So, since Freddie isn't here, I was going to suggest this to him, and I know we've gone over it before, but I thought maybe it just needs a little refresher. I know that we don't recommend that you hook up, though I know that people are. But This week, I believe on July 31st, it's National Orgasm Day. But be sure to wrap it up before you smack it up because you heard baby noises. That's what happens in some cases. Some cases. But I don't know your life. I don't know your life. But, yeah. It is orgasmic. Yes. Let's talk about the let's talk about why orgasms are good. I am a fan. Good to know. Good to know. But I don't do this though. I don't bite my. Well, maybe I do. I've never watched myself. Anyway, orgasms. Let's see. I just pulled up some random site. Is that good? Is that credibility? Because I have friends on Facebook that pull up random websites and quote them and link them, and everything on the internet is true. Right? No? Oh. Well, we'll go with this one. Let's see. This says it's good for a good night's sleep. Do you agree? Do you agree? Oh my God! Somebody beat the baby. Hurry up. Yes, we'll get to that one, Marissa. You can get a good night rest because the body releases endorphins, after you orgasm, and it's shown to have a sedative effect. So, it's a great way to unwind. If you can't sleep, I say, why not give it a try? Give it a try. It helps boost your immune system. Research shows that sex and orgasms are a great way to combat a common cold. Though that's gross. I don't know if I would have sex while you have a cold or COVID or. But maybe that's the cure for Freddy because maybe all this isolation is creating some backup. I don't know. That's his life. I'm healthy. Watch, I'm gonna be sick next week. That's the thing. That because I talk shit. Look, it's gonna happen. Yes, Francis. All right. Orgasms. Number 3, orgasms relieve stress. So I say it's kind of like the first couple that, yes, it relieves stress, but that's kind of obvious. But let's get into the facts. It releases, what is that? Toxin? Which improves your mood and makes you happy. And you relieve the tension. If I have to explain it to you, find a friend. They can help you. I can maybe help you later. I don't know. I'm not soliciting. Sorry. It's the pandemic. I don't know if this one is so much true. Because does that mean that people... Okay, let me read it, and then you tell me. Does that mean people don't have self-esteem? So that's the question. Does that mean people don't have self-esteem? It says that orgasms help boost your self-esteem. Of course, having one orgasm won't solve your confidence issues. Wow. I was going to say, there's a lot of people that just need to have an orgasm. But studies show that regular orgasms increase young. They put young people? Why not just people? Self-esteem. And no, this is not out of glamour or cosmopolitan. Okay. Let's see. Helps burn calories. We already know that. Activity, activity, activity. Keep yourself healthy. During the pandemic, you can exercise, have an orgasm. Same thing. Same thing. It helps clear up your skin. Oh, wow. There are many ways sex and orgasms can improve your skin's overall look and feel. Wow. Wow. I'll be right back. I'm just kidding. One major way is by reducing your hormone levels, which aids clear skin. Is that true? Might have to fact check that later. And if stress is part of one of your causes, we already found out that it relieves stress. So, boom, boom. They help you focus. Allowing yourself to scratch the itch will help your mind move on and get back to work. What are those people? I mean, what if you have an orgasm and then think about having an orgasm again, though? That might lead into sex addiction or what have you. I don't know. But whatever. I guess unless you're focused on that. Right? I don't know. I don't ask questions. And as Marissa said, you live longer. Multiple studies have shown that frequent orgasms lead to a longer life. Wow. Consider the above benefits of relieving stress, making you happy, getting a good night's sleep, all of these things. So while you're working to achieve an orgasm, you are also working to lower your chances of heart disease and brownie points for multitasking. Mm-hmm. I'm so proud of you. So proud of you. Mm-hmm. And the last reason it says is orgasms are great and you deserve it. I agree. I deserve it. I don't know about you. I don't know. What have you done to deserve an orgasm lately? Hmm? Well, that's good. That's good. Yes. Oh, you are deserving. Many comments. Deserving. Okay. Let's see. So I don't want to take up too much time. What time is it? Because we have the interview up and ready to go. Because we have Zander Keig, who is the 2020 National Social Worker of the Year. I was so excited that I connected with him on LinkedIn and that I had to ask him if he would be on the show. And he said yes. Ask Freddie. I was so over the moon. Well, don't ask Freddie right now. He's probably by a toilet or something. He's busy right now. So, don't do that right now. But real quick, before we go into the interview, only because Freddie was updating you on the numbers, I want to keep you up to date on the numbers. And they're starting to do more testing, even though they're still backlogged by a lot. Anyway, and I have made an appointment to do a test this weekend. I have not gone before now, but, just want to make sure, I guess. I don't know. Plus, in the beginning of this, my family wasn't really wearing masks. So, if I have it, we're all getting tested. Okay? Alright? So, on April 4th, there were 2,000 cases in Arizona. Today, as of today, let me refresh this page because sometimes it updates. As of today, there are 186,273 cases, and we are now at 3,466 deaths. Last week we were at 150,000 cases. It was 150,609. And we were at 2,974 for deaths. So we're still rising, even though Mr. I have the chief on auto dial up Trump's butt is saying, "Oh, well, we're gonna discontinue. Come on, we're just wear your mask." No. This is not gonna be a quick fix, folks, because obviously people are still throwing pool parties. People are still having COVID parties, which I don't understand. And I really, really, really hope that you guys are taking this seriously. I say that I have lost 2 people that I know to COVID. Now, if you think it's hilarious to walk around without a mask or be close to people or not take this seriously at all, then stay your ass at home. Let me know when you go out so I don't go, or where you been so I don't go there either. I don't know. But you got to take this seriously. It's getting way worse than I think that it should have. And especially the government's not going to lock anything down. They're reducing the unemployment. They're basically saying fend for yourself at this point. But I understand if you have to go to work. I've been going to work very cautiously, very wiping everything down. Just be cautious. Don't be an asshole. Oh, I should get that as a t-shirt. Be cautious. Don't be an asshole. Somebody make me a shirt. Let it be done. Let's see. But that is all I have for just a quick little tidbit. But I'd like to introduce his intro or his bio on his website is wonderful. So Zander Keig is an award-winning social worker. He is the 2020 National Social Worker of the Year, 2018 California Social Worker of the Year, and a public speaker who sought after being a workshop facilitator and a trans community organizer. There's so much about him that I encourage you all to go to his website. I encourage you to dive into the resources that he has on his website. And he's extremely modest and has accolades out the door. He has his master's in social work. He's co-written books. He's edited books. He's writing one. Just watch the interview. Amazing. So tonight I give you Mr. Zander Keig. So, Zander, tell us about yourself, and we'll take it from there.
About myself.
Anything you want us to know. Anything you want us to know.
Sure. Well, I'm originally from California, but I now live in Orlando, Florida. I have a military and law enforcement background, but I'm currently a social worker. I have been, for all intensive purposes, married to the same woman, Margaret, for the last 18 years. We have no pets or children, so we are free to do as we please, which we like.
Wait, no pets? How does that? I don't even understand that. That doesn't.
We don't even have plants.
Whoa.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm gonna have to go now. I don't know how to.
We definitely have no fur babies, they babies, or green plant-based babies. We are without taking, we're not taking care of anything other than ourselves. Although last year in 2019, my father lived with us for about 18 months, no, maybe 16 months. And it turns out he has dementia. So we were involved in his primary care for a while as far as caregiving in the home.
That counts.
Yes. Yeah, we were ill prepared for it. I'll tell you that.
So
maybe if we had a pet, it would have prepared us better. But
see, or even a plant, a cactus. Would you like? We can send you a cactus. They're very low maintenance.
I'm sorry to say that I am one of those kind of people that I have not only killed bamboo, I've also killed cactus. So I don't have a green thumb. There's something wrong. I think I overwater.
How do you kill bamboo? That's like one of the most robust plants on the planet.
I did it.
Wow.
Okay. Good
I know.
To know.
Don't put me around your plants. I basically, part of my history is that I grew up in apartment buildings, right? I didn't grow up with a yard or a garden, not even the little kind in the window or on your kitchen counter. Like, I didn't grow up with any sort of knack at or invitation to participate in any of those kinds of tasks. So I have no green thumb at all.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I could probably sprout a potato on the counter, but I mean,
yeah.
That's a start. We'll give you that.
So I'm 54 years old, and my family is Mexican. I'm first generation, and but I don't speak Spanish, which is not that uncommon for people from my generation. And I mean, I'm, if you want to get into the nuts and bolts of it, I mean, I was fairly troubled adolescence, and then I ended up in, not juvenile detention, but in a group home setting. And then I dropped out of high school, but I did get my GED, which is what allowed me to go into the military. And that's when my life set on a different course, when I was 20 years old. It wasn't all roses starting at 20. It took me about a decade to get really going. But once I hit 30, that's when I started college. And things have been pretty good since then. So I count my blessings.
Wow. So tell us about how the military set your course, and then how you got into social work.
Absolutely. Well, military is kind of a make it or break it kind of setting. Basic training or boot camp, a lot of people call it, depending on which branch of the military. I was Coast Guard. It's an intensive physical, emotional, mental experience that lasts typically 8 to 12 weeks. Coast Guard boot camp when I went through was 8 weeks, but I did 10 weeks because I got in trouble twice. So I got what's called reverted. I got sent back to redo a week twice. Nope. So I believe I redid my third week twice. So I was definitely a bad sailor in basic training, bad recruit. And but it's a bunch of push-ups, and it's a bunch of memorization of things like classes of boats and sizes of boats. And in the Coast Guard, at the time, we spent a lot of time in the swimming pool, so a lot of survival swimming. I mean, it's intense. It's intense physically, emotionally, and mentally. I was in New Jersey, and coming from Southern California at the time, I didn't realize that it wasn't a good time to be in Jersey. I went into the Coast Guard in October, so I spent October, November, and December in Cape May, New Jersey. It was very cold. Ooh. I had never experienced cold like that in my life. So it was, and I had lived in Salt Lake City but I never experienced the cold like what they call wicked cold out there. So that was it. I think it was the intensity and the not wanting to fail, right? If you didn't make it, you just got sent home, and then you had to spend the rest of your life telling people, who knew you, that you failed out of, boot camp or basic training. And I didn't want that story. I'd already been a high school dropout. I'd already been a, like juvenile delinquent or whatever they called me, incorrigible. And I didn't want my story to continue like that. And so it was also helpful that when I finally ended up in that last basic training company that I ended up in, that company commander was not your typical company commander. He did not curse at us. He did not berate us. He did not dehumanize us. He did not have us do all of these really grueling, unnecessary physical and emotional and mental activities that he wasn't into punishing us. He was into building us up, making us stronger and making us smarter and making us better. And so I think that was helpful, is that I encountered somebody who was investing in us as individuals, and I was made a company officer. So I went from being rejected by 2 companies in a row to being made a company officer. Oh, wow. So I was 20 at the time, not 18 like most, so I was older. And so the company commander saw some leadership quality in me. And so that, I think that did it. That was the part that made the switch for me, because I had only had one other time in my life like that, when I was in the group home. It was an all-girls home. I didn't mention, but I am a trans man. I didn't mention that in my intro. So I spent 2.5 years in an all-girls group home, and in that setting there was a case manager, and she was a social worker, and she was the only person that somehow could get through to my pretty thick, crusty shell. She was able to get through that. And so I've had these individuals throughout my life that have been able to, penetrate that layer and get me to do better and be better. Mm-hmm. And I think when I was in the Coast Guard during basic training, that was like the last real break that I needed. And that kind of started me on the course. How I got into social work is that I knew as a veteran, I wanted to work with other veterans. And there were just so many ways you could get into working with veterans. Specifically, I wanted to work for the Veterans Health Administration or Veterans Benefits Administration, so a federal government position. And there's just job categories. There's job series or occupational categories. And so it was like, well, I could be a driver, or I could be somebody in housekeeping, or a doctor, right? They have these jobs, and they all required extensive training and experience and education. And I had tried to get in with the VA for about 15 years, and I couldn't find my way in. None of the training I had or schooling that I had up to that point was enough to get me into a job. And then I decided that I was going to go into some sort of counseling profession. I landed on social work, and I was fortunate that in my Master of Social Work program, I did a internship at the VA in San Diego in the inpatient psych unit. And so as a veteran, I had priority of hiring, and as an intern, I had the same priority or additional priority. So I was able to get a job at the VA straight out of school. So going into the helping professions, going into the military is wanting to be of service. Doing law enforcement, which I did right after the military, was also wanting to be of service. Social work, especially with veterans and military. I was working with homeless veterans for the first 3 years. And then the next 3 years, I worked with transgender military service members. So it's a matter of being of service. And I continue to do that now, but it's through consulting and training now.
So you joined the Coast Guard at 20, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And you started college at 30. How old were you when you started your transition?
I was 39 years old when I started medical transition, but I was 32 when I started my social transition. And for people who don't understand that, I switched from having an identity as a dyke to an identity, and I'm using terms from back in the day, right? So give us a year real quick, so it'll help put things in perspective for folks.
So let's see. Because I'm trying to do the math, and I'm not mathing well today.
Yeah, let me see if I can do it. So it was 1996 when I was 30 years old.
Mhm.
Okay.
So it was probably right around 97, 98 when I started to identify, instead of as a dyke, as what we were calling at the time a very commonly used word, tranny queer, right? That was not uncommon. It was a word that was coming from the community, right? It came from mostly drag, right? Culture, and it came into trans community as a whole. It wasn't yet recognized or deemed a pejorative term like it is by many. Personally, I still use it for myself because I think we should, if we can identify however we want without pushback, we should be able to use the labels we want to use too. So I still use it, but not broadly. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to shove it in people's face, but I use it sort of in my inner circle. So that was around 1997, 98 while I was a college student in Denver, Colorado. Interestingly enough, I was working in the GLBT Student Services office, which was a official student affairs office with a full-time staff member that was started in the mid to the sort of like 1993, 94 in Denver, Colorado, right? So it was very leaps and bounds ahead of places around the country for the time.
Very cool.
Yeah, so I was very fortunate. Yeah.
That's very cool. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
but it was during that time in college where I started, every time I had an opportunity to do a group project, write a paper, or do something research oriented, I made the focus of it something trans.
doing your research and getting a grade for it.
Right? That's right. That's right. I did the same thing in graduate school. I took a year off. I started graduate school in 2000. The same thing. All of my papers, all of my my group activities, like with, that we had to present in class, everything, my internship, trans, everything trans.
Okay.
So
that's awesome.
So I have a question about the military and trans people and the administration. How has, from your perspective, how has 45, I don't know what the right term is, but like, how has it affected our siblings in the military who are trans that, as the current administration reverses some things that Obama has put into place or taking protections away, how does that affect them?
So I can't speak to right now because I'm not that close to the situation anymore, but I can tell you that I was working for the Navy Medicine West transgender care team at Naval Medical Center San Diego from July 2016 to January 2019. So I was the social worker on the team. So I was there. I helped to establish the team and to develop all of our processes. And then I was there to provide case consultation every 2 weeks. And then I was the person who case managed all of the service members. When I left there, I had 225 service members on my caseload. So a lot. And I can tell you, and I was there during the succession of tweets, right? In August 2017, I was there when the DOD said, we're going to put together this group of people and they're going to listen to expert testimony or evidence. So I was there during all of that. And the people, the service members that I was working with at the time, they had a really broad range of reaction. I mean, so I had some people on one end saying things like, listen, I'm still going to get up tomorrow, put on my uniform and go to work because military is priority for me. Mm-hmm. Right? And actually that's part of the way that the military views it, that transition is not your primary objective. Your primary objective is to do your job as a soldier, a sailor, a coastie, an airman, right? That's your primary job, a Marine. It's secondary, even tertiary, to do the transition, right? So that was the response. On the other extreme were people who were just completely falling apart, having emotional, breakdowns, not being able to function, right? So you had these extremes. And then most of the people were somewhere in the middle. They were like, well, let's see what happens. Tweets don't make policy. Let's see let's see how this plays out. So between August 2017 with the tweets until probably around February of 2018, when there was more formalized, like, we're going to start looking at this more closely. And then the policy that came into effect wasn't until, April of 2019. So there was a lot of time. So there were people who were basically wrapping up their transition during that time, right? Because the military was providing therapy, hormones, surgeries. Some of the surgeries were being performed on military bases by military surgeons, and some were being sent out to the community. The more advanced, the general reconstruction surgeries were almost all going out. We were performing some surgeries at our medical center in San Diego, and people from all branches of the military came to San Diego for surgeries. So they were happening, and they're still happening. That's all still happening. So if you were already in that pipeline when that new, it's not really a new policy. In my opinion, it's a return to the former policy, right? So it's a return to what was before June 30th, 2016, which was that people, by and large, were not able to do transition in the military, but there were waivers. Mm-hmm. And there are waivers now. And that's because it depends on the service member. If they are exemplary, if they have a high skill set that's really needed by the military, they're going to let you in. They're letting people in. Mm-hmm. Right? There is a trans guy who went through Marine Corps basic training not that long ago, trans woman who's now an officer in the Navy. There'll be more, and they're not going through the courts. These are people that are petitioning through the official process of getting a medical waiver and a personnel waiver, right? I don't know the exact language, but they're getting a waiver to come into the military, right? And so I worked with the Navy. The Navy had 2 transgender care teams, one for the Western jurisdiction, so to speak, and one for the Eastern region of the world, right? So I covered Asia, Pacific Islands, all of Western United States, and had there been anybody in South America, they would have been referred to us as well. Whereas the Army has multiple teams across the globe. So it's a little bit easier to keep track of 2 teams of patients than multiple. And then the Air Force has 1. They're very centralized. They're in San Antonio, Texas. So everybody goes through that one team to go through the process of getting a transgender treatment plan. So it's all very organized and systematic. So anybody who was already in the pipeline and already had a diagnosis, they were allowed to continue their transition. They were allowed to re-enlist if they wanted. They were allowed to, pursue whatever they wanted to pursue, at least requesting that they could advance, or they could go to school, or they could do a different kind of job. So that's the difference. So it's very different for people now. If they want to come in, they let people in, but unless you're waived through, you don't get access to gender transition services. So for instance, the Marine that was waived in, mm-hmm. he's already connected in with the transgender care team, and he's going to get to go further with his surgeries and his treatment, right? Because he was waived in. Okay. So it's a broad range. I mean, people might be surprised to learn. I mean, veterans are a very specific kind of group of people. We're very diverse. For most purposes, military people are God, country, and guns and family, right? That's just, it's just the reality of it, right? It's people in uniform carrying guns or trained to carry guns who are defending the country, and they largely want to get married and have families regardless of sexual orientation and gender identity. So there are a lot of conservative trans military people, and gay and lesbian and bisexual. There are a lot of what would be considered like libertarian or centrist or moderate, right? So the political spectrum is quite vast too. So that's an interesting part about the LGBT veteran and military community that's not as either known or discussed, that we're quite broad in our political and social and other kinds of beliefs.
Because you're people too.
I think a lot of that actually, interestingly enough, is coming more and more to light through social media. With especially now since, you know, all we have is social media because we're all basically stuck at home. So now people are posting more, and it seems like more people are kind of
voicing their opinions.
They're voicing their opinions. They're posting things that are pro-Trump. They're posting things that are pro-Confederate flag. You know, all this stuff that I think for a lot of folks, they're like, wait, what? Isn't that kind of completely contradictory to your identity as a person? Like that, I think it throws people off.
Well, I mean, and I live in the South right now, so, and I've been around, you know, I've been paying attention to people up in Georgia and Alabama and Florida and Louisiana, and I mean, I think people would be shocked to know that there are Black people who are conservative and are defending the Confederate flag, right? Like it's an interesting history. So it's or statues, right? Like some family saying that's my family member, that's our family member on that statue outside of that museum. Right, like don't take that down. We're part of history. We don't, right? So it's a very interesting, and not a lot of people hear that because for the most part, that's not going to be a very popular thing to show on the news. So you're not hearing about it, but it's not as it's not as small of a minority as people would think.
Right.
It's right, and so on the veteran side of things, people should also know that the VA has a lot of services for LGBT and especially transgender veterans. So that if you like include my web address, you know, in anything you put out, it's I have a resource page that's like all of the resources available for transgender veterans through the VA healthcare system. So there are a lot of resources for people after they get out too.
I don't know about the area of the country that you're in, but our VA out here is shit for LGBTQ veterans.
In what way?
Based on what I've heard, mind you, I'm not a veteran myself, but I have friends that are. And in terms of, you know, getting in to see doctors, getting doctors to correctly diagnose, to get the meds that they need, anything like that, it's our VA out here is a shit show. Like it is awful.
Okay, so you and I should talk offline because what I can do is I can provide you with the contact information to the LGBT veteran care coordinator in your healthcare system there in Phoenix. Every VA healthcare system has an LGBT veteran care coordinator, at least one. That's VA central office mandates that, but some have more than one, 2 or 3 in some cases, depending on how large the facility is and how many patients there are that are needing services. It's like a patient advocate for LGBT veterans, and so they can go to that person.
That would be an amazing piece of information to have, because that's something that I see veterans out here constantly complaining, and they don't know where to go or what to do, and they end up with dead ends and roadblocks. So if we have that information, that's something that we can provide, and that would be amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, VA central office has 2 liaisons that work on a national level, and then each healthcare system has their liaisons, and then there is a national transgender care coordinator. She works out of San Antonio, Texas at the VA there. And then and there are training teams, and there are transgender care treatment teams all across the country. And no, the VA has a lot, but the thing that the VA doesn't have is they don't have a lot of money to put out commercials, because the federal government doesn't use funds to put out commercials unless it's something super important like the Veteran Suicide Hotline, right? They can't use money to put TV commercials out. Right, so there's not a lot of promotion of it, but a lot of the VAs around, if you go in, there should be signs up, and right, so that's the LGBT veteran care coordinator can make that happen in a bigger, more visible way for people.
That's awesome. That's really good information to have.
You'll have to send that to us so we can share it with people that need it.
Absolutely.
Let's bring it back to you. I just had that because often, like Freddy said, we see people facing different things and having difficulties. But I want to bring it back to you. The reason why I got so excited is because I found you on LinkedIn because you had just recently won an award. Can you talk about that? What award it was?
Sure. Yeah.
at all. So I'm gonna make you do it.
So, right, so the work I was doing in California with the transgender service members, that caught the attention of some social workers in California, and they nominated me for the California Social Worker of the Year award for 2018, and I was selected by the committee that made that decision at the NASW California chapter. So when you are a state social worker of the year, the state office sends your nomination to the national office.
Oh, wow.
And then the national office, every 2 years, I didn't know this, but it's every 2 years they select a social worker of the year. So when 2009 came and went, I was like, okay, I was in the running, but I didn't get selected. And then in February of 2020, when I got the call, I literally had to sit down and have her repeat it like 3 or 4 times, because I was like, what? Because by that time, what I knew was that it was 2 years worth out of 50 states, right? So that's like 100 and people, like 100 social workers that they're choosing from. And like, just little old me, trans guy working with trans people, right? Like to me that I thought there's gotta be people working with like human trafficking, with, with on these, reforming child welfare, these big social work issues. But I think that, I think it's a testament to the profession that they recognize that trans work is on par with these other forms of social work, right? So doing social work with transgender people is also working with the oppressed, the marginalized, and the poor, right? Maybe, right, because I was with the military, I mean, they're structurally kind of poor, but it's very, their housing and things are taken care of, right? They don't get paid a lot of money, but it's like, it was, yeah, I was really, really shocked.
So on top
but I was like, good, thank goodness, like a trans person doing trans work. This is the first time that it's ever happened.
No,
I did hear that there's a teacher in Michigan that got Teacher of the Year. A trans guy got Teacher of the Year.
Correct. Yep.
Right? So it's like more and more this is going to be happening, but this is pretty monumental in the scheme of things.
It's like, oh look, hey, trans people are people too, and we do things like
right, and it's trans specific, right? My work is very trans specific, so it's like, right, because I'm a trainer with WPATH, and I had a private practice as a gender therapist for a couple of years, right? So it's like that's all I was doing was trans focused.
So you are the 2020 National Social Worker of the Year. You were 2018 Social Worker of the Year in California. You have so many accolades under your belt. You've been on various boards, been a part of different associations. Like you've done a lot. You've been a co-editor of 3 different books. You're part of documenting the history of the trans movement and everything that you do. So out of all the accolades that you've managed to acquire throughout your tenure, shall we say, which one what are you the most proud of? Like, what is something that you're like, this is I never thought that this was something I would be doing. This is never something I thought I would get. This is, whatever. What one really speaks to you in, I'm gonna pat myself on the back for this one.
So I have to preface by saying just the mere fact that I'm alive is, right? I never thought I'd even live this long. I was quite a reckless and kid, right? So I was trauma history, perpetrating perpetrating right? So not an unlikely story. So the fact that I'm alive, that right there is foundational. And when it comes down to, I thought about it as you were asking. I was like, oh, I better have a good answer. And the first thing that came to my mind, and by the time you were finished with it, it was still the one thing that I wanted to say, and that is because it's another thing that I never, ever thought I would ever be able to experience. and that is an 18-year marriage. Right?
And you know what? That is something, because fuck, I can barely get through an 18-week anything. So 18 years is, Felicia knows the woes of dating while trans is like, fuck this, Jesus God, just
yeah. I mean, it's I have a lot of friends who lost their partners during the early stage of their transition, or even years into it, but after maybe getting like bottom surgery, that was the last thing they couldn't accommodate. It's right. My parents were divorced when I was 2 years old. My mother remarried, but I was raised by my dad. He never remarried, so I wasn't raised around two-parent home. And my grandmother was a divorce, so all the time that I spent with her as a kid, it was her by herself, maybe with my uncles or my dad around, but no, there was no grandfather in the home. So I didn't have any real role models for that. And so it's not something we're born with, like how to do a relationship. So the ability to acquire that and get to the point where, I mean, I was 36 years old when we met. And so that's, I had obviously been in other relationships up to that point. So I was able to, sorry ladies, but I was, I was on the job training, I guess. But, I mean, nothing, not everything lasts forever, but this one is so cemented. It's, I simultaneously feel like it's been this way my whole life, like we've been in a relationship my whole life, and like it's something brand new, like it feels simultaneously both those things.
I get that. And you know what? And that's amazing. And sometimes that is like the best thing we can do for ourselves, awards and accolades and whatever, like they are what they are, but to really find somebody that gets you and that, that understands, especially as a trans individual. And I say especially because our experiences are very unique in a lot of ways. And, folks can be like, oh, no, I kind of get it and I support you, but to be there through all of it, because it's a mess. And it doesn't matter really whether you've been, transitioning for, 6 months or, 6 years or whatever. Like there are still things that are very unique to us and to our experiences, and not everybody can kind of get on board with that. Not everybody can can understand that and really dig in for the long haul, because Lord knows.
Now, I haven't seen any research on this. It may exist, I just haven't looked into it, but it wouldn't surprise me if there's a higher level of loneliness and isolation, right, in our community. So it's exactly what you said. It's like, sure, so I do things, I get recognized for them, but I don't come home to a lonely household, right? Like some people are living alone, they're not lonely. So I want to separate that out, but no, of course, I'm not lonely and I'm not isolated, right? And so I think that makes a big difference. It wouldn't be meaningless to be recognized for the work that you do and be isolated, but it's so wonderful to be able to have somebody to share that with.
Right. No, absolutely. And I've just based on even people that I know, like I can almost guarantee you that the number, in terms of the isolation and loneliness and things like that, I can almost guarantee that they're higher within the trans community. I mean, based on think of suicide numbers alone, really. And we're trans men, trans women, we are fetishized, we are looked at as bucket list items, we're something to try, we're, what I mean? So it's
yes,
I get that. Actually kind of along those lines, sort of. So I spent a lot of time overseas growing up. I grew up mostly in Southeast Asia, and I spent a good chunk of those years in Bangkok. And for me and for for that environment, trans women, lady boys were commonplace. You saw them all the time. There was no big, it was no big deal. There was no real like, it was nothing strange. It just was. I didn't meet my first out trans man until I'm gonna say about 2005.
Really?
When I moved to Tucson. And I had no idea until that point, because, for me growing up, I always knew there was something, but I didn't have a word for it. And I was like, I don't know, there's just, okay, so I'll be a lesbian. That works. But does it though? So you know what I mean? Like you go through the different identities.
Yes, of course. I know exactly what you mean.
Right, because you want to find the one that works, but none of them quite. They're like, it's like this'll do for now until I figure something else out. And then I met my first out trans man in 2005, and the light bulb went off. Of course, mind you, it was still another almost decade for me to finally go through the fucking transition. But but in digging around a little bit, for my own purposes, I discovered that basically across the world, there is no word in any Eastern language for a trans man.
Oh.
There are terms and there are words for men who choose to live as women and variations thereof, but there isn't actually in almost any Eastern. And I've asked friends from every country I could possibly think of, is there a word for a trans man? And they're like, nah, and the closest thing is, they're equivalent to a lesbian. I'm like, well, yeah, that's not going to work.
Yeah, maybe like the more masculine version of that.
Right. And there's like
probably some slang term.
Right. But there really isn't. And so, and then of course, being in the Western world, almost everything that you see focuses around the stories and the journeys of trans women. And, it's so often our experiences and our stories as trans men tend to get overlooked and erased, with the focus being on the trans female experience. And it's frustrating, first of all. But in why do you think that is? Do you have an opinion about this?
Well,
I don't think he was.
I will say, yeah. So, this is a commonly shared topic of conversation among most of my friends and I. Or I should say, me and my friends. That's probably more correct. And it has been dealt with in ways like Jameson Green's book, Becoming a Visible Man. Just the very title of it. And if you read it, that's his quest throughout the book, is to provide for and argue for more visibility. He's about to publish the second edition of that book.
Wow.
I was fortunate enough to be able to read the pre-publication copy to provide a little, like those back cover blurbs, that people do. And not much of it has to change, because when he published that book, 20 years ago or something, it's still so this has been the issue. And what happens is what I find is that people will, of varying ages around the country and around, let's just stick to the United States, they'll have the same thought, the same experience, the same feeling, and they'll, quote, look for something. And I don't know what that means, right? Maybe they'll do a general internet search, or maybe they'll go to their, they'll see if there's an LGBT community center in their town or their city, and they'll go looking for something that reflects what they're seeking. And if they don't see it right there on the surface, they think it doesn't exist. And they think they have to start something. So I think part of the problem has been that we have a lot of guys all over the country who have started projects like groups, magazines, outreach projects, oh my goodness, social media pages, because, quote, nothing else exists.
Right.
But it does exist. It just is that when you do, let's use Google as an example, when you do a Google search, you have to be very careful with your search terms, right? It's like library science 101, right? When you go to college, they take you to the library for like an hour and a half to teach you how to find things. For me, it was in the little cards. Now it's on the computer, right? It's like you need to know how to do keyword searches that pinpoint, that filter for you. And so if you put in something like transgender, blah, 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 you're going to see trans women. Right. If you do, say, transgender history, you have to scroll past a bunch of pages to get to anything that's maybe not inclusive of, say, like famous people like Chaz Bono or Scott Turner Schofield, right? The soap opera TV star, right? You have to get past like contemporary famous people to get into true history. You're not going to learn about, say, Dr. Michael Dillon, at least, who was in the UK, but he transitioned in the 40s with testosterone. He had a hysterectomy, a top surgery, and he's the first guy to get phalloplasty from the surgeon who invented the procedure, that he was doing it on military guys in the British Army whose junk was getting blown off, right? Like, people don't know that history. He wrote his own book, but his family stopped the publication of it, right? Between 1961 and maybe 2015 or 16, the manuscript sat on a shelf. It was just published not that long ago, right? And so there's issues with our stories aren't being told. But a lot of people, and you can find it pretty quickly, a lot of people know about Roberta Cromwell, right? Race car driver in Britain. Well, he did her orchiectomy.
So we've talked about awards. So I watched something last night that was one of the documentaries that you were in about when you were born.
Oh, was it illustrated? It was an illustrated?
Yeah.
Zanderology.
Yeah. I don't know anybody else that has their own documentary with their name in it. So.
Yeah. So.
You are very.
And I didn't name it. I didn't make the documentary. So I have a friend. We collaborate on a lot. So Megan Rohr, they're a Lutheran minister in San Francisco. We met in seminary. They're also trans, but they're ordained in the Evangelical Lutheran Church of America. And we've co-edited 2 books together. And I've been involved in in the Welcome Ministry project that deals with homelessness and poverty issues in the city of San Francisco. And so we've been working on all these projects over the last 18 years. And as Welcome, we wanted to send off for grant money to do an oral history project. And so I was asked some questions, and then I told my story, and it was recorded. And then one night, Megan decided, I'm going to make a documentary, and I'm going to illustrate it, and I'm going to put Zander's voice, that's awesome. In it. And so then now it's gone around the world to all kinds of different film festivals. Interestingly enough, it hasn't been picked up by any of the trans film festivals that most people would know about. It did make a couple of appearances at Gender Reel, REEL, which was out of Pennsylvania. But then one year they did it across the country in several locations. They sent out like a DVD that had all of the things on it. So it showed up in one of the shorts, but it's one of those things where it hasn't been picked up. But it's quite ingenious, I think, what Megan did with an iPad and a piece of paper and a Sharpie. That's really what it is. It's like they basically took a picture of it and then converted the white piece of paper and black Sharpie to a chalkboard with chalk. It was some Apple thing that they were able to convert it. And then each slide, so to speak, is just a new little marking on the paper or a new piece of paper. So it's kind of like, what was that? Oh no, Mr. Bill. Remember the...
Oh, like the stop motion kind of like.
Yeah, it's like form him, take a thing, form it again, take a thing, and then you put it all together, and it's like it's in motion. Like
claymation, where they had to.
Yeah.
Wow.
But with Sharpie and paper. When this was made, it was a big push around. It Gets Better. Remember that campaign? Mm-hmm. It Gets Better. And so the thought that Megan had was, Well, maybe we don't have to wait till it gets better. Maybe we can figure out what people do to make it better.
Mm.
And they thought, I'm using they because they use they pronouns. They thought that I would be a good candidate to show making life better, not waiting for it to get better. And so that's where Zanderology comes from. It's like the study of how Zander made his life better, because the little description of my life is like, they thought I was dead when I was born, and I was premature by 2 months. I spent those 2 months in an incubator. I ended up with encephalitis after I got a measles, mumps, rubella vaccination. I was paralyzed and blind, and ended up with learning disabilities and special ed, and dropped out, and I was in a gang, right? But then I became what? I went into the military, became a police officer, a social worker, right? So it's like, well, there was nothing to wait for. I had to make it. I had to make it happen. So that's where this idea, Zanderology, right? It's the study of Zander.
That's awesome. I had to. I watched it, and you didn't say anything about it. So I just thought, well,
No.
because even though you're very modest, and I'm sure there's something that I asked you about, but where can people find you online, on social media?
Yeah. So I'm brand new to Twitter and Instagram. I just started up accounts within the last couple of months. So it's the @ symbol, Zander Keig.
He's
You're making fun of me doing the @ symbol.
laughing because he's the same way.
Shut up.
So it's like my name with like no dot between my first and last name. But then Facebook is Zander.Keig66. That's the year I was born. And ZanderKeig.net is my website if people want to see. I have a bunch of resources on my website for transgender veterans. If there are trans guys out there, or anybody who's interested in reading books that are written or edited by trans men, I have a very extensive, not exhaustive, but very extensive list of books that were written by or edited by trans men on that page. I have a lot of different resources on there for people. So it's a resource tab, and you open it up and there's a bunch of things. For example, one of them is a list of about 60-something different children's hospitals around the nation that have gender clinics for teens and youth. Oh, wow. There's more than that. There's probably close to 80 now, but when I made mine, there were like 65 children's hospitals all across the country. Orlando has one. They're all over the country.
Wow.
Yeah.
No.
It's fantastic. Yeah. So that resource is up there as well.
And the book that you were talking about earlier, is it on that list?
I believe it is.
Yeah, if you go to the ZanderKeig.net under books and films, you'll see some of like the academic papers that I've co-authored, and some of the, like I wrote an introduction for a book and a chapter for a book. And if you scroll past that, you'll get to Letters for My Brothers, Transitional Wisdom in Retrospect, Manning Up, Transsexual Men Finding Brotherhood, Family in Themselves, and Manifest, Transitional Wisdom on Male Privilege, in the list of books that I co-edited, and I contributed in some case to some of them too.
I love how you say it, but I have never co-written a book. Okay, so you are.
Well, I'm currently actually writing a textbook. I can't say too much about it, but it's my first venture out actually writing something on my own that's this big. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can tell us more.
Huh?
You have to tell us.
It's
you can.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you the overall topic.
We'll have you back on. We'll have you back on.
Oh, okay.
When it finally gets published, and we'll be like, hey,
okay, good. Yay.
Thank you, Zander.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. This was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed meeting both of you, and I look forward to doing it again. I really enjoyed it. So,
anytime,
and thank you for accommodating my old man schedule.
Thank you so much for jumping on with us and for taking time out of your Saturday to do this, because Lord knows.
Absolutely.
I said so much already. Anyway, thank you, Zander, for joining us. And I had a great time talking with him. We'll have to have him back so we can discuss his new ventures, as well as maybe talk more about social work in the trans community, how it affects the community, just different things that that we could have talked about. We could have went on for like 2 hours. Thank you, Francis. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, babe. I don't know. I always forget to unmute. And I sat here knowing it was the end of the interview that I should have unmuted it, but I did not. What can I say? All right. So, that's the end. I don't have any shows coming up. We will be back for your Wednesday night conversation next week. So stay tuned. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next week.
Promotional consideration for Let's Have a Fefe provided by Wigs of a Kind, The Burly Barber, Bone and Basil, as well as our patrons at Patreon. Go to patreon.com/Let's Have a Fefe to become a Fefe patron. Virtual tips accepted at paypal.me/Let's Have a Fefe. Subscribe to the Let's Have a Fefe podcast. You can listen on your favorite podcatcher. See you next week for your Wednesday night conversation. This has been Let's Have a Fefe. Good night.